Tragedy, and it's a reflection of the impact that this virus is having across our community.
And there will be consequences if you are outside of your area.
Also, the young prompted the province to move beyond current recommendations.
After leaving Winnipeg, I headed back to Vancouver. Not long after Winnipeg faced code red restrictions, the entire province of Manitoba soon declared code red and went into a lockdown. Guess what? British Columbia, the province where Vancouver is located, also went into a series of restrictions. Before we can explore more great places together, why not find out what British Columbia has to offer first? Do you know if you take a train from Winnipeg and travel westwards, somehow eventually you're gonna reach here? Hi, Sayu Rinpoche here. Right now I'm in Vancouver in front of the Pacific Central Station. So this is the main train station in the city of Vancouver. So if you ever take via rail, for example, from places like Edmonton, from Winnipeg, or you just take the Canadian from the Union Station in Toronto, this is the terminus station. Anyways, today we're gonna check out the historic city center of Vancouver, which not a lot of tourists really visit. It's a very interesting area, despite some people may say it's not safe, because after all, this neighborhood has such a reputation that many of the media just claim it to be the poorest neighborhood in Canada. Yeah, you heard that right. The historic city center of Vancouver, today known as downtown Eastside, has been referred by the media as Canada's poorest neighborhood. The area experienced a couple of health crises in the past decades alone. What did the government do? Well, telling people not to go there. During this global event of 2020, or rather it's 2021 now, the media, and I quote, celebrated the neighborhood for not being a hotspot. I mean, if the community is okay like all you media say, then what's the whole point of closing down a park where people have set up the tents for a long period of time? As someone who volunteered there and served the members in this unique community for 3 years, I returned to downtown Eastside not only to show you the current state of Vancouver's historic city center, but also to see for myself what this community is like today. Pacific Central Station is right by the Main Street Science World SkyTrain station. Since I'm already in the area, I'll show you some of the interesting things you'll immediately notice upon getting off the SkyTrain. Okay, don't ask me what that weird globe-looking building is. I'll tell you everything before we head to the historic city center of Vancouver. Alright? Yeah, so I'm at the Science World. Believe it or not, this was one of the main buildings of the Expo in 1986. Now it's the center of the Falls Creek area. Today it is used as Science World, like the name suggests. I guess it's 12 o'clock. The Science World served as the main pavilion of the World Expo 86. An event that turned Vancouver from a quiet provincial city in Canada's west to a global city you see today. You can still spot many buildings associated with the Expo 86 around Vancouver all these years later. Other than Canada Place, where we'll visit in another episode. Nearby, you'll find the former Plaza of Nations. As you can see, the flagpoles where national flags of participating nations of the Expo 86 were hung. Today, it's just a venue for general use. Right across the Plaza of Nations, you'll notice a gigantic building. So the massive building behind me, that's the BC Place. So if you have watched the opening ceremony of the Vancouver 2020 Winter Olympics, so this is a place where the opening ceremony was held. And today it is also the home to two of Vancouver's sport teams, the Vancouver Whitecaps and the BC Lions. I know I'm kind of, a bit off the path from the historic Vancouver, but these places are very close to the Main Street Science World SkyTrain station. It's never really that far from the SkyTrain station, so if you're in this area, I highly recommend to take a look. Okay, now let's get serious. Let's head back to the historic center of Vancouver. Never mind, it's actually closer to the Stadium Chinatown SkyTrain station. Okay, anyways, I'm back at the Pacific Central Station. So the street over there, so that's Main Street. As you can probably tell by the name of the street, it was indeed the main street for the city of Vancouver we just started. So we're gonna just follow Main Street and I'll see you down the road. Yeah, Main Street is home to a lot of Vancouver's oldest architectures. Don't forget, anywhere that's historic, you're also gonna see lots of artists. Vancouver's historic city center became truly historic when you entered the historic Chinatown. Chinese immigrants were one of the first people to settle down following the colonization of British Columbia. Vancouver's Chinatown has a great significance in BC and Canada's history, especially being the second largest of its kind in the Americas, after the Chinatown in San Francisco, California. Around 1/5 of Metro Vancouver's population has Chinese ancestry. The modern-day neighborhood, however, saw a decline in influence and even in the Chinese population itself. So this area has seen lots of gentrifications in the recent years. Whether that's a good thing or bad thing, I'll leave that opinion to you. Please leave a comment below, let me know. Today there are a lot of pubs and it's also a major entertainment district. Continuing on Main Street, soon you'll see one of Vancouver's most iconic, well, some say notorious intersection, Main at East Hastings. It kinda reminded me of the Exchange District in Winnipeg. But still, Vancouver is not Winnipeg. Today, it's Vancouver that has a building named after Trump, not Winnipeg. And guess what? Over 100 years ago, it was Vancouver that had a building named after Andrew Carnegie, not Winnipeg. You see that building? So that's the Carnegie building. As the name suggests, it was commissioned with sponsorship from Andrew Carnegie. East Hastings is arguably the street that has most of Vancouver's historic buildings. I passed by a courtyard that had plenty of graffiti on the walls. A member of the local community approached me and told me that all the murals and graffiti I saw on that day would eventually went down to the rubbles to pave ways for the construction of a new commercial real estate building. Again, think about the question I asked earlier and let me know what you think. What are your opinions on city gentrification? From East Hastings Street, any turn towards the south will lead you right back to Chinatown. I made a turn on Columbia Street And from Columbia Street, it took me to a monument that's dedicated to the Chinese Canadian community. So this monument right here, this is a monument dedicated to Chinese Canadians. So there are two human statues there. So one of them is a railway worker and the other one is a soldier. So those represents the railway workers, the Chinese railway workers who built the Trans-Canada Railway, and also mostly in the western part through the Rocky Mountains. And the soldier basically represents the Chinese Canadian soldiers who fought for Canada in World War II. Behind the monument is Dr. Sun Yat-sen Chinese Classical Garden. Unfortunately, on the day of my visit, it was closed. I continued to explore the Chinatown area, and guess what I found? Let's talk about one-star attraction here in Chinatown. No, it's not a gate. It's this building right here. Yes, this building right here. The Sam Key building holds the Guinness World Record for being the narrowest building in the world. At less than 5 feet wide. Like many great skinny buildings in the world, the Sam Key building was created as a result of widening streets in the age of motor vehicles. Normally, these gates welcome visitors of Chinatowns across the world. This time, it's actually our last stop. So once you walk past the gate, we're no longer within the boundary of the historic Chinatown, but our tour hasn't ended yet. Today's Chinatown, like the ones in Manhattan and many other places, is seeing rapid changes from its past. It is developing into a mix of tourist attraction and a trendy neighborhood. The epicenter of the local Chinese community has shifted to different parts of the greater Vancouver area. We'll explore one of them in a different episode. You see many Aboriginal artworks around downtown Eastside area. That is because the neighborhood has the highest percentage of Indigenous Canadians in all of Vancouver. Most visitors only get to see the totem poles in Stanley Park. If you want to see more Indigenous Canadian artworks in Vancouver, downtown Eastside is certainly one of the places. Speaking of the poster child for downtown Eastside's gentrification, it has to be the former Woodward department store building. Once Vancouver's major shopping center back when downtown Eastside was Vancouver's city center. The Woodward department store saw a decline when the city center shifted westwards to today's Robson Granville area after World War II. The structure that supported the giant W is in fact a replica of the Eiffel Tower. After sitting vacant for some years after the Woodward Company declared bankruptcy in 1993, the building was redeveloped into a university campus with trendy apartment towers surrounding it. The Victory Square on East Hastings Street marks the boundary between the historic city and a modern city center. You can clearly see the difference. Brownstones on one side and modern skyscrapers on the other. You also find two very different communities on the two sides, although gentrification is gearing up the expansion of one over the other. It does require an open mind and understanding of the community to enjoy and appreciate the historic buildings and modern arts you find around the neighborhood. If you get to speak to the people living in downtown Eastside, you realize that most of them are human beings who deserve our respect and understanding like you and I. Although many are less fortunate and struggle with things you and I could not possibly imagine. Just use precautions and common sense like you would when traveling anywhere in big cities. For those who are used to the tour company and cruise ship style traveling, you want to get a hassle-free experience, but still want to see the historic Vancouver. There is actually one place, and it's where the actual city of Vancouver first founded. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Gastown. Gastown was named after a guy called Gassy Jack, the owner of Vancouver's first ever permanent building. Yeah, it was a pub. Gastown is actually the short term for Gastown. But you know what? Most tourists don't know and don't care about this kind of trivia style facts. The majority of visitors I met, however, all believe that Gastown was named after this famous landmark, which attracts far more crowd than that bird crab covered statue of Gassy Jack, which most of them never visited or even knew where it was physically located. Unlike popular belief, this mechanism is not driven by gas, but by the good old steam that once powered the trains, which brought the early settlers to Western Canada. You see that clock with the steam on the top? So that's the famous steam clock of Gastown. So as you can see, it's gonna be 2 p.m. soon. So we'll see how the steam clock works out during every hour. At the end of the road in Gastown is this gigantic red building. This is the former Canadian Pacific Railway Station, now simply known as the Waterfront Station for Vancouver's Seabus and SkyTrain. We started this tour of Vancouver's historic city center from one train station, and we're going to end it here at the other one. In the next episode, we'll explore the modern city of Vancouver, which will be quite different from a historic city you saw in this episode. Stay tuned. Here comes the sails.